We stuffed a 1200 horsepower 2JZ engine into this 2018 Dodge Hellcat, and I suppose the most obvious question is why? Well, Fernando stole the engine out of it for his Hellcat swap 350Z. And Lee used every ounce of wiring for his crispy Dodge Demon project. So this wasn't the best candidate to put back to stock. Now with the engine in, you might think it's all downhill from here, which unfortunately couldn't be further from the truth. After buying multiple donor cars, I think we have everything we need to electrically bring this Hellcat back to life. But we have to be quick about it because we're working to a deadline. July 13th, the plan for this car is to run race motive at Pocono Raceway with one of you in the passenger seat. My partner for this build, Bling Sauce, is giving one lucky viewer a chance to come race with us. All you have to do is head over to blingsauce.com for all the contest details, plus I'll go over them in detail later in the video. You see what I did there?
So we ain't going fast and dirty anymore.
No, we're fast and clean now, thanks to Bling Sauce. And in case you need to be further incentivized, we're giving away some free product later in the video. Go ahead and give the dash a quick wipe down with the interior sauce before it goes in and is difficult to access with the windshield. This is the last piece of the interior wiring that needs to go in place, but it's probably the most important. But it's definitely the most awkward to get in place. A bunch of professionals.
That's easy.
Not bad at all. Aside from housing several important modules, it also has essential CAN bus items like the gauge cluster, which we're hoping to retain as much functionality out of as possible. Aside from a few changes due to trim differences, everything swapped over from the donor chassis nicely. The last piece that has to go into place is the HVAC controls, and it also gives us a nice opportunity to showcase just how perfect the shifter location is. Nailed it. Now we're at the point where we start to have questions. The PCM is the first big one. We know that we're going to put it in place because it needs to be connected for the CAN bus, but we don't know what we might need to take off of the engine harness in order to make everything play nicely. This plug here comes directly from the chassis harness to the engine harness, bypassing the PCM. As of right now, we don't even know what this does, but that's why we kept the entire engine harness in case we need to plug something in to fool the Challenger into thinking that everything's hooked up when obviously it's not. So our other big question is the fuel tank. We know we could put it directly into the Hellcat and everything would hook right up, but we're not running a factory fuel pump setup. Instead, we're running this triple Hellcat pump setup from Snow Performance that comes with this beautiful billet hanger. The 392s have one measly fuel pump. The Hellcats at least get an upgrade to 2, which still wouldn't be enough for our needs, so we had to swap it out for that triple pump setup. Well, it appears I've made my first mistake differentiating between a Hellcat, a Demon, a Red Eye, and just a regular Challenger or a 392. This fuel pump setup is for a Hellcat. It's going into a Hellcat, so I ordered the Hellcat setup, and obviously our gas tank is from a scat pack, and the internal line set on these is different, which means that I have the wrong pump assembly. It's not going to hook up. Luckily, Snow Performance makes the correct one. I just have to go ahead and get it ordered, which means that we need to find something else to do in the meantime. Which brings us to another difference between the donor chassis and our Hellcat, the struts. Our Hellcat came with a mag ride suspension and our donor scat pack did not. Now Dodge did a great thing when they named this system. It's not called mag ride like it is from GM. It's called Adaptive Suspension System. Really, really great job naming it. But for our purposes, what is important is the fact that we don't have a way to control these. Maybe we could make something work, but it's probably not worth the effort. We're ready to power this thing up for the first time. We're nowhere near ready to start it, but in order for Tim to map out all the engine wiring and maybe what circuits we might be able to borrow that are already wired in the Hellcat system, we need to figure out what works and what, more importantly, doesn't work as we are sitting right now. Good. Okay. Hazards. Function. Interior lights. Driver seat. So we're going to put it into accessory mode and then run mode. Okay. HVAC works. We have no radio, fuel level, service airbag system. Our windows now work. So one of our biggest questions is if the car will power off normally, which it does. That's a big win.
A+.
That is a big win.
That's huge, actually.
So that gives us a couple answers, and now we can build off of that. Now, while Tim begins to map out the wiring, let's talk about how you can get your hands on some free Bling Sauce. Believe me, I understand that trying something new can feel risky, which is why Bling Sauce is giving away their 2025 Platinum 3-pack completely free. I'm talking about free for the product and free shipping, no gimmicks, just professional results with amateur efforts. Now, what's included are 3 of their newest top products and some of my personal favorites. The Speed Sauce, an anti-static quick detail spray, the Interior Sauce, an all-interior surface cleaner with UV protectant, and the Tire Sauce, a natural-looking tire shine with no greasy sling. This promotion is only available to the first 150 people that follow my link down in the description below and use my promo code FREESCRAP. Plus, you can stack your promo codes and still get 20% off anything additional that you purchase from blingsauce.com using the promo code ScrapLife20. Plus, you get 5 times entries on every dollar you spend. I mean, what more can I do for you here? We're giving away free Bling Sauce product. You get 5 times entries for a chance to ride in the coolest Hellcat that's ever been built, and 20% off on top of that. I mean, what more will convince you? A celebrity endorsement?
I've been using all the Bling Sauce products I can get my hands on to get my Demon 170 ready for the road as well. Plus, you should know that I'm also going to be racing this thing at Race Motive on July 13th, so you know, if you want to go for a ride in a real Mopar, click the link down in the description. Make sure you're signed up.
That's promo code FREESCRAP for the first 150 people to follow my link for the 2025 Platinum 3-pack sample kit, completely free. Before we dive deeper into the electronics, we have a few more items that we need to put in place that are going to be part of our electrical system. We're going to be running a Bosch 82mm throttle body, which conveniently there are conversions out there directly to a Vibrant HD clamp. Where the problem comes in is on the backside. The bolt pattern that this intake manifold is designed for is an early Ford 90mm square bolt pattern, and this was just kind of a funny fact that if you look at the OEM throttle body gasket, you can see how much it gets choked down versus the 4-inch pipe that this is ultimately going to get fed by. Now, the problem with this bolt pattern is that all the throttle bodies that fit it are cable driven, which works nicely on a Mark IV Supra, but because we're running a Fueltech FT600 ECU, a drive-by-wire throttle body is going to work far better. They make adapters to directly convert this bolt pattern to the Bosch 82mm throttle body, but you can see that our tolerances here are just way too tight. So the plan is going to be to use a 4-inch section of pipe and then adapters on each side, one to the throttle body, one to the intake manifold, that are designed to then be welded to a 4-inch pipe, and that's going to allow us to locate the throttle body into a much better location for our intercooler pipe routing.
Wow, I think we nailed it.
This piece was definitely the biggest question mark. We didn't have an off-the-shelf solution like everything else in this engine bay, and luckily we were able to piece something together and it looks like it came out pretty darn good. Our cooling system is next up on the list, and for this we're going to have to just get a little bit creative. I have a drop-in all-aluminum radiator from Mishimoto, which fits perfectly and adds cooling capacity over the factory system. Where our problem comes into play is how the hose sizing is set up for the Hellcat. It doesn't quite match up to what the 2JZ inlet and outlets are. Luckily though, we have a solution. There are plenty of inlet and outlet upgrades for the 2JZ that allow you to convert the system to AN fittings. And because I now have an all aluminum radiator, all we have to do is convert the outlets on the radiator to AN fitting. The only problem that we seem to have run into is that these Dash 20 AN fittings are absolutely massive. So normally you would have the hot side of the engine would go to the top of the radiator and it would cross flow down to the bottom, but we're not going to be able to do that due to the space constraints. So instead, our upper outlet on the 2JZ engine is going to go to the lower side of the radiator, and vice versa on that side, it's going to go to the thermostat on the 2JZ. Now, Now, our original plan for the radiator was to have a dash 20 on what would have previously been the hot side, the top side. But because we have to switch these, we're not going to be able to use the dash 16 that fits in there very nicely. From the factory, it is a smaller hose on the lower section, larger hose on the upper section. So we are going to go ahead and use a dash 20. Which still fits great. It's just a little bit larger, and then obviously the hose itself will be larger, which is never a bad thing. The other modification that we need to make to the cooling system is on our expansion tank. On the factory Dodge system, the expansion tank feeds the cooling system via this hose, which has a Y fitting that ties into the lower radiator hose system. With us switching to the AN lines, we don't want to introduce complication like this. It's going to be easier for us to make a modification to the radiator and feed fluid directly there. So like the previous modification, we're going to go ahead and weld in AN fittings and design the system exactly how we want it. Expertly done.
That's dramatic.
Now, before we go back in with the radiator, we're going to take advantage of the fact that it's nice and open here in front of the engine and finish buttoning up all the timing set. This is my first 2JZ build, and there was absolutely no way I wasn't using a set of HKS purple cam gears.
It's on there.
You got to say it. What do you have to say?
Ain't going anywhere.
She ain't going anywhere. The last piece that needs to go in place for our accessory drive system is this billet power steering pump delete. So all the other brackets for the power steering pump stay in place, and this just drops right into place right there. So our maximum belt length is 78.5. Our minimum was right about 75 3/4. So I think we'll shoot in the middle at just about 77 and hope that that fits. So our accessory drive is 100% finished up. The only component on the 2JZ that we didn't need was the power steering pump. That piece wasn't cheap. It was something like $250, but because the Hellcat is electric power steering, it looks just a lot cleaner in the engine bay, not having a dummy power steering pump. Tim's making progress on the wiring while we continue to wait for some parts, and in order for him to do his job effectively, we need to put whatever in place that we have, and that would include the fuel rail. For this setup, we're running ID 1300cc injectors, which might sound a little bit small for 1200 horsepower, but that's because we're running 12 of them. Now, 2 1300cc injectors per cylinder is a little bit overkill, but the idea is that we won't have to lean on a single injector too hard and run up the duty cycle, or bump the fuel pressure up and lean on the electronic fuel pumps. Boom.
Quite the masterpiece. Got fancy with the wiring. Tucked it up underneath.
So each one of the circuits on this, there's a primary circuit and a secondary circuit. So that way when we go ahead and plug it in, the intake manifold is completely removable without unplugging each individual injector.
Exactly. And with 12 injectors, that's quite a time savings.
But he also made them inverses of each other so they can only get plugged in one way and we don't have to worry about screwing anything up.
And color-coded. So when you do unplug them, it's easy to figure out which goes where.
Now, in order to put the intake manifold on for the final time, we need to go ahead and install our oil filter housing while it's nice and accessible. And, oh, you may have noticed that the Hypertune valve covers finally showed up. We need to put the O-rings on them, and then those can get installed, and we'll have a mostly complete-looking engine bay. Now, I am going to go ahead and use the OEM oil filter housing. A lot of people replace these and relocate the oil filter for convenience, but for our setup, I think it's going to be useful to go ahead and run this. Number one, the end of the bolt has a very convenient location for our oil pressure sensor, and then number two, we are going to be running an oil cooler on this car, so if we're not running this directly off the block, it's going to be a lot more convenient to route our lines and our fitting. I have two rules of thumb on every single car that I build. I always run an improved racing oil cooler setup and an improved racing catch can. And now finally we can go on with the intake manifold for the final time, hopefully. For the Hypertune valve covers, all we need to do is install the baffles and the O-rings, and then these are good to bolt in place.
Fully O-ringed.
We did shift the radiator a little bit farther forward using some washers as shims and then slotting the lower support, and much happier with the clearance that we have, especially between that AC pulley. But now we can start mapping out these radiator lines. Well, if you've never worked with Dash 20 fittings before, you basically need 2 people and a hammer. And then lots of lube and motor oil.
Whatever you gotta do, right?
And then 2 people again.
It's almost like you should have built a stronger bench. Fucking like 15 years ago, right?
Or a properly mounted bench, that works too. One down, one to go.
It's perfect.
The Dash 20 AN lines routed much better with this orientation, and then we have from our expansion tank our fill point plumbed in directly to the radiator. This is going to be the highest point in the system, so any air is going to bleed up to here. The only other thing that we need to wrap up with the cooling system are our heater hoses back on the firewall. Believe it or not, the flow through the heater core can actually play a pretty pivotal role in an engine's overall ability to cool itself. Our lower line is the return from the heater core. It brings the fluid back into the engine cooling system where it enters at the water pump and can either go through the radiator if the thermostat is open, or it goes directly back into the engine. Now, the upper heater core line is maybe the more important of the two. It brings the hottest fluid out of the engine from the head, and more importantly, we have to have a way for it to vent any sort of air that is trapped in there. So we have a T-fitting that allows the air to escape from the highest point of the engine to the highest overall point in the cooling system. And with that, the cooling system is 100% complete, ready to be filled. We also took care of the PCV system. While I was handling the heater hoses, Tim went ahead and welded the bracket for the catch can directly onto our expansion tank. Both the Improved Racing catch can and the Hypertune valve covers are set up for Dash 12 ORB fittings, which enabled us to run Dash 12 push lock line, which will give us maximum crankcase vent, and eventually we'll replace the temporary zip ties.
Probably not, though.
So finally, after some lengthy shipping delays, we have our fuel pump assembly. This is the original one that I ordered for the Hellcat, and really the main problem is this outlet hose right here. You can see how significantly larger it is than the scat pack. So what's in the tank will only attach to this, not to this, which is the whole reason that we had to order a new assembly. And actually looking at them side by side, you can also see that the setup for the fuel level sensor is completely different as well. This is that line that I was just referencing. It runs over to the other side where the siphon pump setup is. None of this is going to be used anymore because we're feeding the fuel directly out of that Snow Performance hat. This is the old feed, which conveniently they provide a nice little cap that goes in here. And then we also need a, what is that called, Tim?
Fuel pressure regulator block off plug.
Yeah, we need to install that too.
Look at the little guy. Fuel pressure regulator for internal returnless systems.
Because a returnless system isn't a big loop, what this does is it internally allows the pressure to bleed off. So the fuel pump is still generating the flow, but this isn't allowing it to actually leave the tank. Both the feed and the return are going to come out of this side of the tank, which means that over here we just need a plug. So that way the fuel can be pulled from this side of the saddle over to where the actual pumps are.
That doesn't get in there. Not even remotely close like that.
Well, it appears we've hit a snag, maybe two of them actually. So on the left is the original fuel pressure regulator, and on the right is the one supplied by Snow Performance. And the height isn't the important part because these actually sit in the assembly like this. So they're actually pretty close to the same height. What is the issue is the sizing, the diameter of the orifice there. I don't know exactly what the terminology is. My brain hurts at this point. But basically you can see that this one is a little bit wider, so it doesn't set all the way down into the assembly there and seal properly like it should. The other problem that we have is with the fuel level wiring. This is the wiring that came with the Snow Performance kit. It has 3 wires on it. Our factory setup has 2 green wires on the driver's side, and then there's a complete another float on the passenger side that has a green and a black wire. After talking with tech support, it appears that maybe we have the wrong plug for the fuel level sender assemblies that are in this Challenger tank, as well as maybe that pressure regulator delete. So unfortunately, after waiting on FedEx for quite a long period of time, it appears that we are in another holding pattern for the fuel tank. But the main goal for the end of this video was to get the engine bay looking complete, and we pretty much have that. This is going to be the end look. Obviously, we still have a lot of finished work to actually make this thing run in the next video, but we're getting close, guys. So one other thing that I have on my mind before we call it quits on this video is the wheels. It seems weird, but this late in the build, I have not picked out a set of wheels yet. The setup for these is a little bit interesting. They have the big brake calipers in the front, so we definitely need something that's at least a 19-inch diameter wheel, most likely a 20 in the front. It also has 14mm wheel studs. In the rear, we have a little bit more room. It looks like we can go down to an 18-inch diameter wheel, which will come in handy because I'd like to run a relatively large drag radial in the rear. I already bought conversion spacers to take the bolt pattern from a 5x115 to a 5x114.3. The only thing that I know is that I want to run a tuner style wheel on this car. Obviously, with it being a 2J swap with an import engine, I think it makes sense if we get some sort of kind of iconic, you know, JDM tuner style wheel, whether it's old school or more modern, but I just can't make up my mind on what I'll be able to get in those sizes, a combination of an 18-inch wheel in the back and a 20-inch in the front with relatively large diameter. The factory wheels are something like 20x11 -3 offset. So we've got a lot of room to work with, but it's an interesting combination, and there's not a lot of info out there for sizing that type of wheel on this car. So I'm going to get the input of the guys around the shop, and then I also want your input down in the comments.
Tuner style wheel for the Hellcat.
Advan GTs.
TE37 the world.
Gotta be works for you, right?
Definitely.
There you
No,
go.
about D37.
Dang.
Road of slipstreams.
Oof.
All right.
Advan GT. 3-piece work. What was that?
The S1s? Like the
Yes,
5
yeah.
spokes?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a
Like
good one.
the one that Fernando has.
Yep.
So in the meantime, we're going to do the traditional Mopar thing and borrow a set of wheels from Lee's Charger here for an unspecified amount of time.
Yep.
Everything swapped over from the donor chassis. God, motherfucker. Chassis, yeah, you heard that.
Oh, no, I was tired.
Like a glove.
Quiet onset, wow.
I'm traumatized.
I need the rest of the day off.
Yeah, not smart. Saying it's a bit challenging working on these Dodges, or
That was offensive.
I will never recover from this.
That's how you work?
yeah, I'm just curious if it's challenging working on, you know. That's all.
What's up?
All right, really get me charged up, you know.
All of which we're going to get to very shortly.
Sorry.
My brain is just trashed. This guy. This guy. One fucking take, Carrington. That's how you do Mopar shit. Important modules. It also